Period six is in the books, and I got the scores for you today. Just going to go over those really quickly here. My voice is a little bit dryish today for some reason. I don't have a cold, but maybe I've been talking a lot or something like that recently. But bear with me. I think I sound fine enough. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. First off, thank you for your service, of course. My dad was in the military, he was Air Force, and I grew up military on military bases. And I remember it was kind of rough as a kid because we would move a lot. We moved maybe two, three times a year sometimes. So I always felt like I don't want to join the military for that reason. I was like, forget about that life. I didn't like the idea of, I'd make friends and then we'd move. But I really do wish I actually did join the military. It would have been a good experience for me. Would have gotten a little traveling in, would have learned a lot of things there. And it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. But I was a young rebel and I never joined up. But I thank you guys for your service, those of you that have done that. So at any rate, here in San Diego today, just a little quick thought. Nice weather as per usual, but we do have a little bit of rain coming next week, which is unusual because we've been so used to sun and no rain for quite some time now. Last year, I remember it was sunny and warm all the way up through Christmas. We didn't get any rain, and then all of a sudden, those Santa Ana winds kicked up around the 1st of January, and that's when you got the big LA fires, the Palisades burnt. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that's what we're in store for now. Of course, the rain is coming sooner this year. We got a little storm coming next week, and that's a lot earlier than it was last year when we had a drought all the way up through the New Year's. And then it started raining and it kind of didn't stop. And, what's unfortunate for me is that I recently signed up for the California motorcycle safety course. I know I'm a crazy boy. I'm a little older now, but I've always wanted to get a motorcycle of my own and start riding a motorcycle, as part of my routine going to work and stuff. Just, save a little money on the gas, have a little bit of fun, and then not be so dependent on my old Honda Civic, which has cost me quite a bit of money over the last couple of years. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go out and get a cheap 350 motorcycle, get my license. I'm always good on two wheels. I've been riding my bike forever. So yeah, if the rain comes when I'm doing that safety course in about 3 weeks from now, that's going to stink. But then again, maybe that's a good thing because I'll get a chance to see what it's like to ride in the rain. And when you learn under the toughest of conditions, it makes you all the better, I think. So enough of all that stuff. Let's get on to the basketball scores on screen. You can see I pulled up the period six box scores and standings. So let's have a quick look. The first game up was the Pistons and the Saints, and this one went to the Pistons 133 to 107. The Saints never stood a chance. They struggled a lot this week. One of the reasons, no Zion Williamson. Also, they kind of struggled. The Saints did. That's my team. Josh Giddey, his worst week of the season, just 15 fantasy points in 34 minutes. That was nothing special. Jalen Brunson is yet to catch his stride. He struggled a lot in this one. Khalil Ware, our center, we were really expecting a lot more out of him. Pretty bad period here as he scored .33 fantasy points per minute. That's not going to get it done. Meanwhile, the Pistons, Ben Johnson's team, went off for 133 points as they made short work of the Saints. They got outstanding performances from Giannis Antetokounmpo. He scored 27 fantasy points in 37 minutes. They also got a very good performance from Cade Cunningham, their point guard. When your point guard is scoring .58 per fantasy minute, that's going to get it done. So basically, the Pistons just roll by the Saints, and as a result, the Pistons now have a 4-2 record, and the Saints are also 4-2. I can't get this to just highlight what I want here. You can see it down here anyway. So the Pistons over the Saints. Pistons now 4-2. The Saints 4-2. Moving on to the next game, it's the Alberta Cowboys versus the Carolina Copperheads. And in this one, it was the Copperheads winning 117 to 98. The Copperheads' leading scorer, or leading minutes getter rather, was Franz Wagner. He had 16 points in 37 minutes. They also got 17 points from Evan Mobley. mostly playing power forward and center. Big games for the Copperheads came from Jalen Duren. Now, I talked about this in this text. If you guys have been paying attention to my texts, I have been doing something with the positions because I really want this league to be more realistic. I found this website called Cleaning the Glass, right up here, Cleaning the Glass. And what they do is track minutes. You guys can go there and kind of try to look around there. I'm not sure if they offer like a free like visitors access. I had to pay $5 a month for this, and I only did it because I want to know exactly what minutes are being played at what position for our players, so that we can have a more realistic fantasy league. But at any rate, that's not an important page. Let's get rid of that one. The live scoring, we get rid of this one. Let's get back to the message board post here. So Copperheads go 4-2 with the win over the Cowboys. The Alberta Cowboys scoring just 98 points in this game. The Cowboys pretty much across the board struggled. They did get a decent game from their center, Jacob Podol. He scored 15 in 25 minutes, and he had a .61 fantasy point per minute rating. That's strong. Also, Norman Powell, a guy they just picked up in free agency, not a bad game there, 13 and a half. He played about 29 minutes. .462, that's solid. Let's have a look at the Copperheads. I already talked about Franz Wagner and Evan Mobley. They also got a huge game, of course, from Joker. He had 31 fantasy points in 30 minutes. You can see the fantasy points per minute. He's averaging over 1 point per minute. Yeah, nobody does that. That's pretty impressive right there. And, of course, we expect that from Joker. So long as the Carolina Copperheads have Nikola Jokic, they're going to be a competitive team. They just have to figure out a way to spend their money wisely and put enough talent around this guy to make it work. When I look at this team, I see that Jalen Duren and Evan Mobley both play center, as does Jokic. They have a logjam at center. Now, this year, I'm going to allow Jalen Duren to continue to play power forward, but beginning next year, unless something changes in his minutes usage this season, he's going to lose that eligibility. Now, of course, Jalen Duren is also probably coming up on a contract at some point. He might have a year or two left. You can go to Spot Track and see the future of your guys' contracts. That's a great website to kind of get a read on where you're going in your salaries. If Jalen Duren doesn't get power forward eligibility, I think it's time for Mark to do something with either Mobley or Duren. Mobley's a little older. He makes a lot of money. Maybe they can find a way to move him. He's a very good player. Of course, Mobley already plays power forward, and I don't think that he had that taken away from him. These positions are accurate. So he does have Mobley to play power forward, but Jalen Duren's kind of that lost guy, because when you've got Jokic, you really don't need a guy like Jalen Duren. Now, at that price, of course, $6.5 million a year, that's hard to pass up. And I mean, I could go over to Spot Track and check things out, but it would take too long. I'd say that, at some point, Jalen Duren is going to go up quite a bit in price. And yeah, as you can see here, Jalen Duren is coming up on a contract season. He's a restricted free agent in the offseason, and the way he plays, he's going to get a pretty sizable contract. So that answers that question. I think that Jalen Duren is going to get too costly for the Copperheads and Mark, and that could be a player that you might target for a move and maybe get a piece that you need, because you do have a bit of a logjam there at the center position. So who knows? I mean, that's just an idea. I think the trade deadline in this league is right around Super Bowl time, so we got some time to think it over. But maybe it's time for Mark to part ways with Duren. He was most likely going to lose his power forward eligibility at the end of the season. I did reinstate his power forward eligibility for now, because I don't want to disrupt your teams too much with this whole position thing I dropped on you all. And right here, I want to say, you got two exceptions this year. If you want to change the positions of a couple of guys on the roster, feel free to ask me about that. As long as that was their previous positions, that's fine. And we'll do that for you for now. But at the end of the year, I'm going to use the previous two seasons to determine what primary position a player can play. And if they can play two positions, they basically have to be at about 30% or better usage at a position to consider that to be a full-time position in this league. I'm going to make it around 30, 35-ish. We're in the 30s, low 30s. That'll be acceptable for a guy to get full-time eligibility at a position in this league. I went through a lot of players over the last day, so I have got a feel for just about how much usage is reasonable to allow a guy to play a position full-time. So moving right along, we got through a couple of scores here. Let's go on to the Knicks and the Sixers. Sixers got some bad news on one of their players this week. They lost a starting center that was, let's see here. We got Walker Kessler. Yeah, he got hurt and he's going to miss the rest of the year. So that stinks for them. But they did have enough to beat the New York Knicks, 110-68. The Knicks are not full strength, and they're not going to be full strength for a little while here. I think as the month of November is progressing, they are supposed to get a lot of these guys healthy again. Anthony Davis, he's always in and out of the lineup, but Tyler Herro's coming back. And De'Aaron Fox actually played in this game, and he played very well. De'Aaron Fox scored 16 fantasy points in 31 minutes. So very, very exciting for that team to have him in action. And then once they got Anthony Davis out there, Jamison Battle perhaps, Tyler Herro, Tobias Harris, once they get all these guys out there, this might be a different team. But for now, they're very much a beatable team, and Philadelphia took care of business, beating the Knicks 110-68. Philadelphia got a good game from their starting point guard, Tyrese Maxey, who scored 20 fantasy points in 40 minutes. That's a .501 fantasy points per minute rating. Excellent for a point guard. Also, Mark Williams at center, strong performance. So they need their centers to step up in the absence of Walker Kessler. And they got that in this one from Mark Williams, as he scored 16 fantasy points in 29 minutes. Other centers that came through for them were, I'm not really seeing a lot of other performances that are good here. We're looking at Colin Murray-Boyles, who only averaged .39 per minute, fantasy points per minute. That's definitely not solid for a center. So Philly, who started the season really hot, they've hit a little speed bump here, and we'll see how they respond to that. Moving on, Chuck and Heat checks versus the Houston Rockets, and Williams' team is just simply melting down right now. I know William is a college guy. I work with William. I actually know this guy personally, and he just isn't doing much with his team, and that's why they're struggling. He needs to get on the site and start doing some research and picking up some free agents. He talked recently about just dumping everybody because he's like, I'm doing bad, aren't I? It's like, well, haven't you been listening to the reports, William? Yeah. So he's talking about dumping everybody. If anybody's interested, maybe a fire sale about to go down here. I really don't think that Williams going to trade Scotty Barnes or James Harden, but I could see Karl Anthony Towns being on the block. So if anybody needs a center, and again, Towns is one of those exception players where I might be like, well, if you have two exceptions on your team, I can move him back to being power forward eligible for this year. But starting next year, the guy's just going to be a center, most likely. But at any rate, James Harden, probably not tradable. I think I mentioned him a second ago. William is a big James Harden fan, so probably not a good shot here to get him. But there are some guys here that make reasonable salaries that could be trade bait, perhaps. I'm looking at maybe a guy like TJ McConnell, who is not healthy yet, but per minute, he's usually a pretty darn good player. Kelly Oubre could be a guy. He makes about $8 million, and he's having a pretty good year. He didn't really play well in this game, but perhaps there's a piece that could be traded. If I was William, I would be dumping Klay Thompson's salary right now, today. I wouldn't have this guy signed last year or the year before, for that matter. He's making nearly $17 million, and he's living on reputation. So there's a guy that I would definitely dump, free up some cash, do something with it. As you can see here, the Rockets are spending about $220 million, which means they have less than $1 million to spend. They got to free up some capital and bring in at least some prospects. So the Rockets lose to the Heat checks, and the Heat checks got a strong game from, I guess it's Jaime Jaquez. He scored 17 and a half in 31 minutes. Also a big game from point guard Ryan Rollins. 16 points in 31 minutes. That's a .527 fantasy points per minute rating. Very strong there. Michael Porter playing the forward position, .497, also strong. So Heat Checks get the victory. And with that win, they go to 2-4, and the Rockets slip to 1-5. They are struggling badly. All right, let's move on to the next game, the Poway Eagles versus the Boston Celtics. The Celtics, again, another team that is struggling. And as you can see right here, the Eagles had a very good period, 131 points. And this is a team that has shown the ability to play very well at times. They started the season hot. They played Denver and lost to them by 1 point, and they scored about 130 in that game. Then they went down a little bit in a couple of periods, but here they are back at 131 points. The Eagles go 3-3 with this win. The Celtics drop to 1-5. And how did the Eagles get it done? Well, Deni Avdija. This is a guy that has been playing extremely well since he left the Washington Wizards for Portland. And it's kind of a surprise that the Wizards gave him up because, quite honestly, his numbers were decent with Washington. And a lot of fans out there for that team, I saw the YouTube videos, they were a bit distraught over the fact that their team traded Avdija away. So Avdija has been taking over the Blazers. I said it last year when he got traded to the Blazers before the season got started. I said that he's the best player on the Blazers, and he is obviously the best player on the Blazers. And the reason, it's the efficiency rating. The efficiency rating is a very smart statistic. It really puts value on players who don't make a lot of turnovers, don't miss too many shots. You know, these guys who are ball hogs score a lot of points, and you see that they scored 35 points, but if they shot 40% doing it, how is that helping your team? It's probably hurting your team. And Deni will throw in some assists, some steals, some rebounds. He's just a solid player. And in this league, he can play both small forward and power forward. Now, something I did notice this year, he's playing mostly power forward, and he's still got that small forward rating based on last season. If he continues playing mostly power forward this year for the Blazers, and we have to go back 2 years, he could end up losing this small forward eligibility eventually. Now, he will hold on to it because last year, again, I said he did play some small forward. So he won't lose that. But down the line, it's possible. And that would really stink because he's very valuable as a small forward, I think. But as you can see here in this game, 0.76 on the fantasy points per minute, 28 fantasy points, 37 minutes. That is strong numbers right there. Stephon Castle is a guy that has come around for this team, the Poway Eagles. He was drafted as a rookie last year, I think second round. That's my brother's team, and I always help him out with his team, so I know a lot about his team. And strong game from Stephon Castle. He looked like maybe he might not be, he might be kind of a semi-bust type of player last year. I know Reed Sheppard has shown that to this point, and Reed Sheppard was a first-round pick last year. But really encouraging for the Eagles to see Stephon Castle starting to come around. He had a good game here. DeMar DeRozan, their big free agent acquisition in the offseason, paying him $25 million. He had a strong game in this one. Darius Garland is back, and he had a strong game, 0.518 per fantasy minute. Very good game there. I see Aaron Nesmith showed up in the box score here with a big game, 18 points, 26 minutes. Also Donovan Clingan. I mean, this team really went off. This was definitely one of those periods where if the Eagles would have lost the game, you'd have to say that this team is just cursed. Because after losing on opening period against the Nuggets, when you score 130 points, if you were to lose a game like this, scoring 131, man, you just want to ram your head through a wall. So at any rate, Deni's team struggling a bit. I did notice, though, that Deni has been making moves in free agency, so that's very nice to see. Last year, Deni was very much inactive as a GM in this league, and I've talked with him in the offseason and got him into the website, got him involved a little bit by just like making sure that he was signed up and he was signed in. I think there was a problem with having access to the site last year, so we fixed that, and Deni is now showing signs of life. And even though his team is still kind of rebuilding, hey, 107 points, that's a score that could beat people. You never know. But in this particular game, overmatched by the Eagles. and he loses. So now we go to the marquee matchup of the week. It was between the San Francisco Warriors and the Denver Nuggets. That's AJ Nardi, who runs the Nuggets. That's Phil Johnson, who runs the Warriors. Two teams at 5-0. The clash of the Titans. And in this one, the Warriors put up a very strong 121 points. They got a big game from AJ Mitchell. Mitchell is a guy who makes only $3 million. I had Mitchell on my team last year. I picked him up as like a minimum contract guy. I traded him to my brother because I really wanted to solidify my center group. I traded for Jonas Valanciunas, who makes a very reasonable salary, and he's always a very efficient player. I traded AJ Mitchell as part of that deal. In the offseason, I thought, my brother was making his cuts, and I'm like, maybe AJ Mitchell is a scrub, I'll let him go, And look what happened. Phil Johnson picks him right up. I kind of looked at him and thought about picking him up, but I felt like that would be really dishonest of me to tell my brother to drop him and then I pick him up. I didn't want to, that would look bad. So I just let it sit thinking, no, AJ's just a backup guy. He was a two-way player last year. And in this game, he scores 19 fantasy points in 32 minutes. Look at that rating, 5.95 fantasy points per minute. Holy mackerel. AJ Mitchell is going off for the Oklahoma City Thunder right now, and Phil Johnson has himself a bargain basement player right there. That's the kind of guys that get you over in this league. Donovan Mitchell, big contract, $46 million, big game, 0.58. You got Alex Sarr, the center, 4.68, not so hot for a center, but not bad. It's doable. I got a lot of guys playing center on my team right now that aren't even getting those kinds of numbers, so you can't complain with that too much. Big game by Cedric Coward. There's so many guys that Phil always seems to uncover. Luka is buried in the rotation on this team. He had 15.5 points, 27 minutes. He had 5.78 per minute. Really good game, but Luka Doncic is not even getting the priority of minutes at point guard on this team. That is crazy. Chet Holmgren, a strong game. And Phil Johnson put up a very respectable 121. So let's get on to the Nuggets. As you can see over here, huge game from Trey Murphy, 0.84 fantasy points per minute, 32 fantasy points, 38 minutes. That's a big day. Victor Wembanyama, he's been struggling lately, but a pretty good game here, 18 points, 35 minutes, 0.522 fantasy points per minute. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a monster game, 22 points, 32 minutes, 0.7 on the fantasy points per minute rating. Also a big game by Nikola Jovic, 0.7. At the end of the day, it was the Nuggets 143 to 121 over the Warriors. I didn't see this one coming. I mean, the Warriors didn't look beatable last week and their last game period, and they had a good game here, but the Nuggets were not stoppable here. And they score the 143 big ones. They win the big matchup. They remain undefeated, as you can see here. The Nuggets take over the top spot in the league. In the Retro League at 6-0, the Warriors at 5-1, Fort Wayne Pistons, San Diego Saints, and Philadelphia, and the Copperheads all 4-2. Eagles are 5-5, not 5-5, 3-3. You got the Cowboys and the Chuck and Heat Checks at 2-4, and then Houston, Boston, New York Knicks. Well, Houston and Boston at least at 1-5. Knicks are without a victory to this point. So I stumbled and stammered through this thing. Hope you guys stuck with me. I'll try to polish up my delivery. I didn't really have the time for the 11 labs today, or to take more time with this video. I just wanted to throw out the information, talk with you guys a little bit. That position thing, I'm really excited about it. I think it's very important that we make that move because Fantrax really had a lot of positions wrong, and I'm really thankful that I found this website, Cleaning the Glass. And the way I found them was I was checking out what positions players were playing, and I was using ChatGPT to do it. And they kept coming up with these percentages. This guy plays 23% at this position. He plays 56% at this position. And I'm like, where are you getting these numbers finally? I just thought, because sometimes chat doesn't give you the percentages. And I'm like, I want those percentages. So I thought, I just asked it, where are you getting these percentages from? Is there a website? And they said, there is, Cleaning the Glass. So I just promptly went over to Cleaning the Glass, and now I'm paying that guy $5 a month, which is well worth the money to keep this league on target like we're going to do. And that was awesome. So no more having to go to chat all the time. I do use that service, though, a lot just because there are other things I need to know. There are a few young players that Cleaning the Glass doesn't know anything about. So I will still use Chat GTP and my own insight. I know about the size of players, their tallness and their weight, whether or not they're qualified to play certain positions. It's a very rare case when you have a player like that. So don't worry about it. And guys, also on a final note, I want to remind you that even though a guy might be listed as a power forward, doesn't mean he can't play center, doesn't mean he can't play small forward. It's just his primary position is power forward. If Cleaning the Glass shows that he plays a percentage of his minutes at another position and you need minutes at that position, I will get you those minutes, but not full minutes. It's going to be based on that percentage. So if he played 30 minutes in a game and say he gets 20% of his minutes at shooting guard or something like that, 2 times 3 is 6. So he gets 6 minutes available at shooting guard if you need those minutes. I want this league to be realistic. It's very important. I spent a lot of time on it with the spreadsheets and all this stuff, and we got the salary cap. This has to be the most realistic fantasy basketball league you play in because it won't be great any other way. And with that, once again, happy Veterans Day, everybody. Hope the weather isn't too cold for you guys up north. I think they got a little bit of a warm wave up there around Chicago. I noticed they had snow in that football game over the weekend, but then all of a sudden they had forecast 60 degrees sometime about now. So, hey, guys, bask in that warmth. Winter's here, and it's just going to get worse. Actually, I don't think winter's here yet. That starts in December. So enjoy the rest of your fall, and I will be back with you guys in the near future with more reports. Thanks for listening, everybody.